Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into Ezekiel, the 23rd chapter. In this chapter, it's dealing with the Lord calling to remembrance, the wickedness, the sins of Israel, but more so the idolatry. However, he says it, he likens it onto Israel, the kingdom of Judah, and the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, having committed whoredom. He basically likens them onto whores. And there's some verses in there that are, somewhat explicit, going into the comparison that the Lord is making between the Israelites as a people worshiping other idols and serving other gods, and a whorish woman, having many partners and committing lewd acts while she has a husband. Okay, so you'll see a lot of that comparison as we're reading. There's a lot of, likening Israel to a woman and the gods of these other nations onto, the men of these other nations. Okay, so let's get into it. This is the book of Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 1. And the word of the Lord Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother. So they were sisters. And they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. There were their breasts pressed, and there they bruised the teats of their virginity. Okay, now basically what the Lord is saying here is there were two sisters, okay, which were, played the roles of whores in Egypt. And this is talking about Israel as a whole, but the two sisters likening Israel after it got split, the kingdom got split. You had the kingdom of Israel, which was the northern kingdom, and then you had the kingdom of Judah. So these were the two sisters, right? But in Egypt, obviously, they were one nation. But here it says they were committing whoredoms in Egypt. So going back to when before Israel got delivered out of Egypt, they were committing all forms of idolatry and serving the Egyptian gods and so on. That's the whoredoms the Lord is referring to here. So it says here, there were their breasts pressed, meaning they're like what you would expect, right? Pressed, not as in like, somebody stomping on them, but somebody caressing them, fondling them, playing with them. Okay. So they were having their breast, messed with. And there they bruised. When it says bruise, it's not referring to your typical sense of a bruise, like somebody punches you and you have a bruise, but it's also another form of saying, caressing and stuff like that. The teats of their virginity, the teats being their breasts, their nipples, all of that. Okay, and their virginity because they were young, like it says, not as in underage young, but youth, as in a woman, a youthful woman. She has a perky set, and so on and so on and so forth. So the Lord is saying here that going back in Egypt, when they were committing these whoredoms, like whores, having their breasts being played with, and their youthful breasts being fondled. Verse 4, it says, and the names of them were Aholah, the elder, and Aholibah, her sister. And they were mine, and they bare sons and daughters. Thus were their names. Samaria is Aholah, and Jerusalem Aholibah. So the Lord is saying in this metaphorical talk that I'm doing here, in this scenario I'm likening them onto, Aholah is going to represent Samaria, which is the northern kingdom, and Aholibah is going to represent Jerusalem, which is the southern kingdom. Okay, and it says they were mine because they belonged to the Lord, but they were committing adultery against them. Verse 5, and Aholah played the harlot when she was mine, and she doted on her lovers, On the Assyrians, her neighbors. So in this sense, she lusted after, like it says, her lovers, which would represent these other gods, these idols, I should say, right? On the Assyrians, her neighbors. So when it talks about the Assyrians, or when it talks about the people of another nation, it's really referring onto their idols, the idols of that nation. But once again, the Lord is likening here the act of you bowing and serving the idols of another nation onto you being a woman that is committing adultery with the men of another nation. So verse 5, it says, and Aholah played the harlot when she was mine, and she doted on her lovers, on the Assyrians, her neighbors, which were clothed with blue, captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen riding upon horses, and clothed in blue. That blue goes into the attire. It really goes into a purplish attire, or a purplish dye, which, as I've covered in previous lessons before, was a very expensive, all right, because it was hard to make that purple dye, and then to use it to for clothing, that would make the price of that clothing skyrocket. So those that were wearing this would be those that were in high stature. Thus she committed her whoredoms with them, with all them that were the chosen men of Assyria, and with all on whom she doted. With all their idols she defiled herself. So she was basically going about like a whore, and all the men she lusted after of the Assyrians, she would defile herself with them, i.e., she would serve those gods, those idols. Neither left she her whoredoms brought from Egypt. For in her youth they lay with her, and they bruised the breasts of her virginity, and poured their whoredom upon her. So as she's committing adultery with the Assyrians, she didn't leave her adulterous ways behind, right, from Egypt, but rather she carried it with her. And as it says, in her youth, right, back in Egypt, they lay with her and bruised the breast of her virginity. So they like a whore, they played with her young, youthful breasts, and they poured their whoredoms upon her. They hold her out. And the Lord is saying here, she didn't leave those ways behind, because now she's doing it with the Assyrians, i.e., the idolatrous ways that the Israelites were the practices they were doing in Egypt. They didn't leave that behind. And now here it is, they're serving the gods of the Assyrians. To the Lord, it's likened on to his woman committing adultery with Egyptians. They playing with her breasts and all of that. And now she basically slinging it around, holding it up for the Assyrians. Verse 9, wherefore I have delivered her into the hand of her lovers, into the hand of the Assyrians upon whom she doted. So the Lord said, you want to commit adultery, you want to go about and do all this with them? Cool, I'm going to deliver you into their hands. The same ones you lusted after. These discovered her nakedness. They took her sons and her daughters and slew her with the sword. And she became famous among women, for they had executed judgment upon her. So what actually happened? The Lord ended up having the Assyrians come up and besiege the northern kingdom, right? I believe it was Shalmaneser V, which started that siege around 727 or so BC, if I'm not mistaken, right around that time though, around the 720s. And basically besieged the northern kingdom, Samaria, and took them captives over to Assyria and those different regions over there. Okay. So as it says here, right, they discovered her nakedness, they took her sons and her daughters, and they slew her with the sword. So they basically destroyed, they deported the northern kingdom out of their land. They destroyed them through the siege. It was very bad. But it was known, it was a known thing. Right? Verse 11, and when her sister Aholibah saw this, she was more corrupt in her inordinate love than she, and in her whoredoms more than her sister in her whoredoms. So when the southern kingdom saw this that was happening, it didn't deter them from going about and engaging in their idolatrous ways. In fact, they went and surpassed the shit that the northern kingdom were doing. It's what the Lord is saying here, right? When their sister Aholibah, which represents Jerusalem, When she saw what happened to her sister, in time, she became more corrupt in her inordinate love. Meaning, inordinate love is you know, unlawful love, i.e., adultery, these kinds of things. She did that more than her sister, Ahola, right? And in her whoredoms, more than her sister in her whoredoms. So she basically surpassed what her sister did. She doted upon the Assyrians, her neighbors, captains and rulers, clothed most gorgeously, horsemen riding upon horses, all of them desirable young men. So she lusted after them. They started to get into the ways of the Assyrians, following their idolatrous ways. Okay, those are the neighbors, the captains, the desirable young men. Then I saw, because those are the ones she was committing this adultery with, which represents her or the people worshiping their idols. So who would the idols be? The ones that the people were committing adultery with, which would be, in this example at least, the captains, the rulers, X, Y, and Z. Right? It's metaphorical. It's one speech meaning another thing. Verse 13, it says, "Then I saw that she was defiled, that they took both one way," meaning that both Ahola and Aholibah, is that, let me see if I got the name correct. Yeah, Aholibah and Ahola, both of them followed the same path. They both went down the path of wickedness and whoredom. And that she increased her whoredoms. For when she saw men portrayed upon the wall, the images of the Chaldeans portrayed with vermilion, girded with girdles upon their loins, exceeding in dyed attire upon their heads, all of them princes to look to, after the manner of the Babylonians of Chaldea, the land of their nativity. So when Aholibah, i.e. the southern kingdom or Judah, saw the ways of the men of Babylon, they saw the attires they were wearing, they saw their as it says, their expensive clothing, all of that, which represents when they started to delve into the idolatrous practices of the Babylonians, right? When they got exposed to these things. Verse 16, "And as soon as she saw them with her eyes, she doted upon them and sent messengers unto them into Chaldea," right? So it's likening Jerusalem to like a whore. And once she laid eyes on them Babylonians, she sent messengers immediately. She lusted after them. She said, go and get them. Bring them to me. And the Babylonians came to her in the bed of love, and they defiled her with their whoredom. And she was polluted with them, and her mind was alienated from them. So the Babylonians came, they committed adultery with her, defiled her ass, and then she was polluted. And after that, it says her mind was alienated for them. So after that, she didn't want to deal with them no more. She didn't want to see them no more. And what that represents is once they got exposed to those wicked practices of Babylon, okay, that they became defiled with those practices. Right? That was this form of them being defiled by these Babylonian men and so on and so forth. It was really their idols that they were serving that made them defiled. Because the practices and customs that they were doing, passing their children through the fire and all of these things, those practices were not native to the Israelites. These were customs that were picked up from these other nations. And that's why the Lord is likening it onto committing adultery with the men of these other nations. Verse 18, "So she discovered her whoredoms and discovered her nakedness," meaning she made herself exposed. "Then my mind was alienated from her, like as my mind was alienated from her sister." So now the Lord started to, he was unhappy with her. Okay? He was no more down with him. He separated himself. Yet she multiplied her whoredoms, in calling to remembrance the days of her youth, wherein she had played the harlot in the land of Egypt. So even after this, she didn't stop. The Assyrians wasn't enough. The Babylonians wasn't enough. In fact, she remembered, she continued this by going back to her previous whorish ways when she was playing a whore in the land of Egypt. For she doted upon their paramours, whose flesh is as the flesh of asses, and whose issue is like the issue of horses. And you can guess what this means, right? She doted upon their paramours. The doting meaning she lusted after them. A paramour is like a partner of someone that is, like an illicit partner that's like a concubine, but in this sense, like somebody that you're cheating on your husband with. Okay. So in this case, she was this metaphor saying that she lusted after these Egyptians, whose flesh, when you actually look into the word flesh, which I'll do, there's different use cases of it, but in this case, it's talking about their rods, their genitals. Okay, let's look up here, whose flesh. So I guess the Egyptians had a rep. Anyway, it says here the flesh, Bashar, and it says here, I flesh of the body of humans. The definition C says male organ of generation, okay, meaning your rod, the male genital part, and this is a euphemism for that. Okay, it says here also, right? It says flesh from its freshness, by extension, body, person, also by euphemistically, meaning when you use this term as a euphemism, you can use it to refer to the pudenda of a man, i.e., the genital part of a man. So what the Lord was saying here is, she lusted after these Egyptians, whose rods were as the rods of asses, and asses have, they like, if you do the research on it, they say that their rods are like, like 14 inches, anywhere from there and up. So basically, this is, the example the Lord is given here, saying that she was lusting after these Egyptians, packing supersized sizes, right? Whose issue is like the issue of horses, meaning the load. I'm trying not to be as explicit here, but in order to cause the understanding, sometimes you gotta just say it as it is, right? So the word for issue, as you can see here, it says flow, issue of seminal discharge. Okay, so when they unleash that load, like a horse, when a horse lets loose, that's a heavy load right there. One would say that's a heavy load. Okay, so these Egyptians must have had a rep. That's probably why when they show some of these hieroglyphs of these Egyptians in certain scenes, they show them with some long ass, rods and shit. Okay, so they're probably known for that. So the Lord is saying here, she remembered her whorish ways from when she was being holed out in Egypt. Okay, and she went back to lusting after them Egyptians with supersized rods, releasing loads like horses. To put it in other terms, that's basically what's being said. Okay. It says here, thus thou callest to remembrance the lewdness of thy youth, in bruising thy teats by the Egyptians for the paps of thy youth, meaning they called to remembrance the whoredoms that they were committing in their youthful times, right, back in Egypt, as it says, in bruising thy teats by the Egyptians, meaning in allowing your breasts to be played with and caressed by these Egyptians, all right, which they love to do that because, as it says, for the paps of thy youth, because she was like a woman in her prime, a nice young woman of age. Okay, so them Egyptians, obviously they, a youthful set, can't hurt, basically. But in actuality, what this represents was them going back to these practices, these idolatrous ways, even as far back as Egypt. And when we read a few chapters before, Remember that when the Lord gave Ezekiel a vision of what was happening in Jerusalem, they were worshiping all sorts of idols, and some included the sun god, going back to Egyptian practices. Okay, so that's what the Lord is saying here, but in a metaphorical form, likened unto a woman that's going back to her her whorish ways of her past. Verse 22, therefore, and you can see that the Lord is being explicit here, but it's to describe, he's putting it in terms like this because it makes sense. It will make sense for you to sort of understand and relate to what the Lord is saying here, because he's using practical scenarios. We are not, gods in the sense that we have people worshiping us and bowing down to us. So we don't understand that actual dynamic per se, because we're the ones, we actually do the worshiping. We have a God that we bow and serve to. So he's given this example to say, think about it like this. Think about it as if your woman that you married, that you had kids with, was going around committing adultery with all these men all around her. The neighborhood, she the neighborhood whole. She started off as it when she was young, and she's still doing it to this day, and even going back to her exes, who they ain't no joke. They ripping her a new one. Like that feeling you would get, that's the Lord, that's the point the Lord is making here. Saying that this is what it feels like when you go about serving these other gods and these idols. Verse 22. Therefore, O Aholiba, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will raise up thy lovers against thee, from whom thy mind is alienated, and I will bring them against thee. I will bring them against thee on every side. Now, this is referring to the Babylonians, because when we read a couple verses up, remember it says that when she laid her eyes on them Babylonian men with all their rich apparel and vermilion, she sent messengers to them that they should come, and she lied with them. But then after that, her mind was alienated from them. Well, guess what? The Lord said, them same Babylonians that your mind was alienated from, I'm going to bring them against you. The Babylonians and all the Chaldeans, Pekod and Shoah and Koah, and all the Assyrians with them, and these were all in that region of Mesopotamia. Okay, it says, and all the Assyrians with them, because when the Babylonians were in power, guess what? Yeah, they took down the Assyrian Empire, but the ruling class of the Babylonians were Assyrians themselves. Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar and all of them, they were Assyrians. So it says here, all of them desirable young men, captains and rulers, great lords and renowned, all of them riding upon horses. And they shall come against thee with chariots, wagons, and wheels, and with an assembly of people, which shall set against thee buckler and shield and helmet round about. Meaning they're going to come prepared for war. They're going to bring their chariots, with their chariot men, their horses and their horsemen, their wagons, carrying the things that they need. Because remember, when you go to war lasts. It wasn't like war lasts more than 10 or 2 hours. So when you go to war, of course, you're going to have provisions and all of that for your soldiers to survive. So you would have wagons containing these things. You would have them containing, different resources and weaponry and so on and so forth. Right? It says, and wheels, especially if you're going and you have to, besiege another nation. And with an assembly of people, which shall set against thee buckler and shield and helmet round about, which is a siege. That's what they did. And I will set Jerusalem before them, and they shall judge thee according to their judgments. And I will set meaning they're going to destroy it. That was what their judgment was going to be, right? When the Babylonians came to Jerusalem, they destroyed it. And I will set my jealousy against thee, and they shall deal furiously with thee. And they shall take away thy nose, and thine ears, and thy remnant shall fall by the sword. Meaning that these were the kinds of things they would be doing when they came against you, because the Lord will put that spirit of his wrath and jealousy and his furious anger upon them. So they'll be cutting off them noses and ears, killing people, as it says, thy remnant shall fall by the sword, and they shall take thy sons and thy daughters, and thy residue shall be devoured by the fire. So they took some of them captives. Some of them they left to take care of the land. The remaining of the palaces and the temple and all that, they burnt it. They shall also strip thee out of thy clothes and take away thy fair jewels. Now remember, the Lord is still likening Jerusalem to this woman. So the clothing would be the expensive material, right? The jewels, the gold, and all of that. Well, when the Babylonians came, is that not what they did? You think that when they went into the temple, they just burned everything? No, they took out the golden vessels, they took out the silver, anything of value, they took it away. Thus will I make thy lewdness to cease from thee, and thy whoredom brought from the land of Egypt, so that thou shalt not lift up thine eyes unto them, nor remember Egypt anymore. So by this means, I'm gonna destroy that stupid ass idolatrous ways that you like to do. You wanna remember the ways of Egypt? Let's see if you can remember that during this destruction I'm gonna bring. Verse 28, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will deliver thee into the hand of them whom thou hatest, into the hand of them from whom thy mind is alienated. And they shall deal with thee hatefully, and shall take away all thy labor, meaning all the things that you've worked for, the things that you've built, made, anything of value, they're going to take that, and shall leave thee naked and bare. So what did they? They took the people, they took the best things of the land, the resources, all of that. And the nakedness of thy whoredoms shall be discovered, both thy lewdness and thy whoredoms. So you're basically going to be exposed. You're going to be uncovered, and everybody's going to see your shame. And what this manifested as was the Lord allowed Jerusalem to be destroyed, to be brought into a low and destitute state for even the nations round about to see and mock. And when you read the book of Ezra, right, second Esdras, even first and second Esdras, but second Esdras, a part of why the Lord sent an angel to Esdras was because when he was speaking his mind to the Lord, he was complaining, saying, Lord, look at the condition you brought us in. You say that you made the world for our sakes, but we don't even have an inheritance in here. We're captives in a foreign land. Yeah, we were bad, but are these Babylonians any better? If not for us, who's going to call on your name? Because of the state and the condition the Lord had put us in. And then, he was justified. Look, we've read 23 chapters worth of the Lord reiterating, this is the wickedness they're doing. This is what I'm going to do to them. This is the wickedness they're doing. This is what I'm going to do to them. I will do these things unto them or unto thee, because thou hast gone a whoring after the heathen, and because thou art polluted with their idols. Thou hast walked in the way of thy sister, therefore will I give her cup into thine hand. So the same way the northern kingdom was heavy into their idolatries, right? I think in the book of Hosea it talks about that. Ephraim is given onto idols. So the same way, right? That's the sister is talking about here. The northern kingdom, they walked in the ways of whoredom. The Lord says, guess what? You walked in that same path. Therefore, the cup, right? I will give her cup into thine hand. So the cup that she had to drink, which was the captivity and the suffering they went through, the Lord says, you're going to drink that same cup. You're going to go through those same things. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, thou shalt drink of thy sister's cup, deep and large. So this cup is not a small cup. It's deep. It's a big cup. But you're going to drink it all. Thou shalt be laughed to scorn and had in derision. It containeth much. Because what you're going to have to go through, i.e. representing what you're going to have to drink out of this cup, is a lot. And these nations round about, as you're drinking this cup and you're catching hell and you're being brought to a low estate, they're going to have you in derision. They're going to scorn. They're going to laugh. They're going to mock. Thou shalt be filled with drunkenness and sorrow, with the cup of astonishment and desolation, with the cup of thy sister Samaria. So the cup you're going to have to drink is the path that you have to go through, the judgment that you have to undergo for the same wicked acts that your sister did, that you're doing. So it's not going to be fun. That's why it says it's going to be filled with drunkenness and sorrow, the cup of astonishment and desolation. Thou shalt even drink it and suck it out, and thou shalt break the shards thereof. Break it. All right, inside joke. But the point is, meaning you're going to drink all of it, right? You're going to drink it even to the remnants at the bottom of it, and you're going to break it, like, because the cups in the ancient world wasn't like some plastic joint. And pluck off thine own breast, for I have spoken it, saith the Lord Yahweh. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to grab your titties and tear them off of your chest, but it means that they're going to, be in a state of mourning. Like if you look at, for example, I'm going to paint a picture in your head, right? You say you have maybe this woman who just, was in a case, I don't know, something happened. She lost her husband and her kids all in one day or something like that. And she, some women, when they hear news like that, they put their hand on their chest. Some of them actually grab their chest, as they're mourning or crying, and it looks like they're pulling away at their chest. So that's what the Lord is saying here, because of the pain of the destruction that's going to come from you having to drink this cup, right? You're gonna express that mourning. Verse 35. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thou hast forgotten me and cast me behind thy back. And how did they forget the Lord? Well, what did the Lord said, right? He made a covenant with us in the wilderness. I am your God, you are my people. This is what I require of you. Do it and I'll bless you. If you don't, I'll curse you. Follow these ways. And specifically, the Lord, he made it explicit. He said, do not follow the ways of the heathen. This is why, number one, I'm trying to tell you to get them all out of the land before you go there. But I want to make you separate, holy. I don't want you to be like them. Don't follow their ways. They went up into the land. And what did they do? They followed their ways. And in doing so, they forgot about the Lord. None of them stopped to think and say, hey, didn't the Lord say we shouldn't do this? None of them started to say, let's execute righteousness in the land. They threw all that, like it says, they cast me behind their back. So they treated the Most High like an afterthought, because they were so busy focusing on the idols and the wicked ways that they wanted to follow. Every man following the ways of his own heart. Therefore, bear thou also thy lewdness and thy whoredoms. So now you're going to have to carry the consequences of the lewd, wicked acts that you've been committing, and your whoredoms, i.e. your idolatrous ways. The Lord Yahweh said moreover unto me, Son of man, wilt thou judge Aholah and Aholibah? Yea, declare unto them their abominations, that they have committed adultery, and blood is in their hands. So they committed adultery against who? Against the Most High. How so? By worshiping these other idols. Blood is in their hands. What were they doing? Well, it's going to tell us. And with their idols have they committed adultery, and have also caused their sons, whom they bear unto me, to pass for them through the fire to devour them. So you had women and different, families and, wicked ones burning their children as fire sacrifices. And the Lord is saying here, that blood is on your hands. You committed adultery by worshiping these other idols, serving them, going up onto these groves, these high places. And you didn't stop there. You sacrificed these children that are mine to these other gods. Verse 38. Let's see. Moreover, this they have done unto me. They have defiled my sanctuary in the same day, and have profaned my Sabbaths. For when they had slain their children to their idols, then they came the same day into my sanctuary to profane it. So you would have certain individuals that would go, maybe in the morning, they would go and commit a sacrifice to another god, and then they'd come to the temple to come in and quote unquote worship. It says here, and lo, thus have they done in the midst of mine house. And furthermore, that ye have set for men to come from far, or ye have sent for men to come from far, unto whom a messenger was sent. And lo, they came, for whom thou didst wash thyself, painted thine eyes, and deckest thyself with ornaments. So once again, going back to the metaphor of Jerusalem being a wicked, adulterous woman, she sent messengers to men from afar, basically telling them to come through. Like if that married woman sends a text saying, "Yo, come through, I got the free crib," and they came, they pulled up. Snow, winter's heat, summer allergies, it don't matter. They pulled up. As it says, she prepared herself. She washed herself, painted thine eyes. Today, that's like a woman putting on makeup. Right? And deckest thyself with ornaments. Putting them jewels on and all that to look good, to commit adultery. And sattest upon a stately bed, meaning a glorious bed, and a table prepared before it, whereupon thou hast set mine incense and mine oil. So that you prepared yourself for these men that you're going to commit adultery with. You put in using my resources to go and do this. I.e., you're worshiping and serving gods from a faraway land. You're sacrificing the animals and the food that I've given you. You're sacrificing the children that really come from me, because I opened the womb and I closed the womb. These meat offerings and all of that, which really should be sacrificed to me, you're sacrificing them to them. Verse 42, and a voice of a multitude being at ease was with her, and with men of the common sort were brought Sabians from the wilderness, which put bracelets upon their hands and beautiful crowns upon their heads. And this is like painting that picture of like a harlot's scene, meaning like you had the sound of like many men, common men of all sorts, with you, putting bracelets on your hands and crowns upon your head. Then said I unto her that was old in adulteries, meaning she been committing adultery from her youth up. She's been serving these idols from all the way back in Egypt all the way till now. And the Lord said, will they now commit whoredoms with her, and she with them? So all these dudes over here, you gonna let them hit too? Yet they went in unto her, as they go in unto a woman that playeth the harlot. So it's kind of like when, a man goes to a whorehouse and there's a woman over there. The woman doesn't see just one man. She throughout that day, there's a whole bunch of different, men that deal with her. So the Lord is saying here, you got all these dudes over here, and I'm asking, you gonna commit whoredoms with her too, or with them too? And that's exactly what they did. As they go in unto a woman that playeth the harlot, so went they in unto Aholah and Aholibah, the lewd women. And the righteous men, they shall judge them after the manner of adulteresses, and after the manner of women that shed blood, because they are adulteresses, and blood is in their hands. Meaning righteous men would look at these women and judge them after this manner to say, these are adulterous women. You got to put them to death. These women have blood on their hands. But thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will bring up a company upon them, and will give them to be removed and spoiled. So I'm going to bring enemies. I'm going to bring a host, an army against you, and I'm going to give you into their hands, and they're going to remove you from this land, and they're going to spoil you. And the company shall stone them with stones, and dispatch them with their swords. They shall slay their sons and their daughters and burn up their houses with fire. Yeah, because guess what? What was the judgment of an adulterous woman? She was to be put to death. Once again, this is all metaphorical to say that you had all these idols serving all these different gods, which is wickedness. And for that, I'm going to bring this company or this nation against you, and they're going to judge you. They're going to destroy you. So the stoning with stones and all that represents the killing, the destruction that these, in this particular instance, as it mentioned, the two sisters, this is what the Assyrians did to the northern kingdom, and this is what the Babylonians were going to do to the southern kingdom. Verse 48, thus will I cause lewdness to cease out of the land, that all women may be taught not to do after your lewdness. So in this case, for example, if in the actual society you had a woman that was caught in the act of adultery, they would take her to the elders, and then they would bring judgment upon her. So maybe they might stone her, right? But when they did something like that, everybody would witness it. And that way, those that were around, the other women would know, and the man who's committed, if this is consensual, right? In this case, they would both be put to death. Then the community would know, yeah, we're not finna do that. I'm not trying to get those stones. No. So that's what the Lord is saying here. I'm going to make an example out of you to cause that lewdness, that idolatry to cease out of the land. That everybody else around can bear witness and can learn from this situation here. Verse 49, and they shall recompense your lewdness upon you, and ye shall bear the sins of your idols, and ye shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh. So you're basically gonna pay the consequences of all that idolatry that you've been doing. And as you're going through it, you're gonna keep in mind and know that I'm the one who's causing it. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the book of Ezekiel, the 23rd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Mercha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.